Hi, this is Siofra's Magick Alcove, and I'm Siofra Bradigan. So, Happy New Year! Today is Friday the 1st, 2021. Here's hoping this year goes better than last. I'm sure we're all hoping for that. So, when we were talking on the live show last Sunday, one of the subjects that came up, for me at least, was the idea of making a pact with a spirit and how that happens and how to avoid it. So I decided that that would be a good subject to start the year off with because it's not always clearly stated in the literature, at least the literature that I have read. And so I'd let you go through some of the processes that I went through so that you know why I came to my conclusions. So let me think. First thing that I noticed when I was first studying magic, I read a lot of some of the old grimoires and the Western magician's approach to dealing with spirits. And one of the common themes in a lot of the literature from way back when was that the ceremonialist would call a spirit being into a triangle outside of his circle to manifest, which is something, a real kind of thing. And then after he got the spirit there, he would threaten it with, all kinds of terrible things that would be done to the being if it didn't do what he said. So there was a lot of this power over the spirit world attitude going on. And then some of those stories evolved into the magician running down the street screaming because the demons or spirits that he had done this to had figured out he had made a mistake and were chasing him down the street getting their revenge. And I thought about that and I thought, well, I can understand why. Because, if I was a spirit and some human called me and started yelling and screaming at me and threatening me with, all these things that were going to happen if I didn't do what he or she said, uh, I would be looking for a loophole because that's sort of obnoxious. That just seems like the wrong attitude to have when you're dealing with spirits that you want assistance from. So that's not really a pact, but that's a danger sign or an attitude that can create dangerous situations. Because, of course, what the spirit would be doing would be looking for a lapse in judgment on the magician's part, a little hole in the circle or whatever that would give them an out from whatever the pact was that the magician had forced the spirit into. In this case, it was the magician making a pact or forcing a pact upon a spirit being and making it conform to certain parameters within a limited, well-defined job description. So that never appealed to me because I'm just sort of not built that way. It's not like the way I interact with people. I can use that kind of I'm in charge, I'm the authority tone under certain circumstances when it comes to setting boundaries for myself. I mean, that's not what I'm talking about. It's not that you never tell something what to do, it's just the circumstances are different. And so you're not going to be, it's not a good idea, I should say, to try and threaten a spirit with harm to make it comply with your wishes. My personal opinion. If you want to try that, I guess that's entirely up to you, but I'm a more cooperative type of magical person. I like to develop relationships with the spirits that I interact with. And whether that is deities or, spirit beings or different kinds of spirits or whatever it might be, that's kind of how I look at it. So, for example, I do as much as I can for nature spirits when they ask me to, or as much as I can on the human side to fix things that people have done, like my experience in Big Sur, for example. Um, that was something that was a big deal when it comes to the ley line and healing it and so forth. And the nature spirits that were there assisted me, but they couldn't do it themselves. And so we worked together as a team, cooperatively, and that kind of thing. And so developing relationships with different kinds of spirits and knowing what your boundaries are, that's why boundaries are so important, so that you don't accidentally cross them, either your own or a spirit being's, keeps you in that sort of category of, well, I can't help you with this right now, but maybe in the future, if there's something I can do, I will. Or if you can help me out, that would be great. If this is in the realm of the betterment for all, and it's not going to accidentally harm some other forces or something, like if this is supposed to happen, then don't help me because I don't want to stand in the way of that, because then later I'm going to have to pay it back some other method. So I talked a little bit about in the channeling mediumship episode, I think, about the guy that sort of agreed with the first spirit being that he met when he went into the astral, that all life was, the secret to power was hate, and he did whatever that spirit told him to. And not remembering all the details, when I read his material, it was clear to me that he was making a pact with that entity. In fact, that's where he was getting his power. That being, entity, whatever it was, agreed to channel that energy for him and do whatever he needed. So if you have a tendency to, let's say, get mad at people easily, and you are always asking a specific spirit or group of spirits, like specific elementals or something like that, to go and harass the person who's making you angry, that would be creating a debt. I guess that would be a better way of putting this. You're creating an energetic debt for this spirit being. So the more you ask a spirit to do things for you instead of learning to do them yourself, or getting a cooperation kind of assist or what have you, the more debt you incur energetically. And when you leave this plane and pass over to the other side, that's when your debt becomes due, energetically speaking. So say you're dealing with Venusian spirits all the time, for example, which is one that is very attractive to a lot of people, because the Venusian spirits are beautiful and loving and exciting and sensual and all this other stuff. So that is one of the spheres that some younger magicians get pulled into, because they're attracted to that kind of thing. So let's say you used your influence in the Venusian sphere to get relationships with people, to make people like you when they might not like you, or what have you, that kind of thing. And you incurred a debt to the Venusian sphere. So when you pass over, then you go to that sphere. You go to the Venusian sphere, in this example, and then you work as a Venusian spirit for the period of time of whatever it is that your energetic debt has incurred. So if you did it a lot, you could be there for a long time after death. And on the face of it, that might not seem like a bad idea, but what can happen is, if you incur a large enough energetic debt, then you may never get out of the Venusian sphere. Because the way the elements are, earth, air, fire, water, is pretty much what everything is composed of. And then ether, spirit, is generally speaking just humans. That's the individual different spark that makes us unique amongst spirit beings. And it's an attractive quality for other spheres, energetic spheres, beings to have, because it allows them more latitude as far as what they can accomplish, what they can do, and that kind of thing. And so they're willing to do stuff for certain people in order to get them indebted to them, so that when that time comes, they have that extra spark. The problem with the long-term kind of debt is that the person who has incurred the debt and spends the time in that sphere could then forget that they're human. They could lose total touch with that entire notion and idea. And when that happens, they become part of the planetary sphere or energetic sphere, whatever it happens to be, that they have been indebted to, and just stay. Because they don't have an impulse to leave. They don't have any kind of a memory that this is not where they've always been. So that is one thing to remember. And there are some other hazards when it comes to working with different kinds of spirits, like working too closely with certain elementals can get people in trouble. I think the water elemental is one of the more common ones that some older in the olden days, some magicians would get themselves completely involved in a relationship with, say, a water nymph, or something of that nature, and have feelings for that spirit being that sort of cloud the whole point of being here, what they're here for, what they're trying to accomplish, what they're doing, and sidetrack all of their progress. That's not necessarily the same type of debt. But always know what you're dealing with, and so we haven't talked too much about Franz Barden. I mentioned him here and there, but he has a book called Magical Evocation, which has got a list and descriptions of the job descriptions for a lot of different spirit beings in planetary, elementary spheres, and the corresponding sigils, spirit seals that go with it. So if you wanted to actually work with a specific being, you can look up their description and their, what they're inclined to do. Some of them are already positively inclined to assist the magician without incurring debt. It's something that they enjoy doing. You can read that in the description. It's a worthwhile book to have. And if you ever decide you want to try actual evocation, that would be the book you would need. Ian and I have done a couple of evocations. We haven't gotten to the point of a complete physical manifestation of a spirit being on our plane, but we're working towards that, and we've definitely had some positive results in asking for assistance of the right kind of being that would be wanting to volunteer for that particular job, let's say. And no threats no threats had to be used in the performance of this. So it's like, if you think about relationships, think about human relationships, you can sort of get a good feel for what this is all about, because if you're all about having power over other people and power over other spirit beings, then you're going to be the one who's at risk for having to pay back a karmic debt, or the energetic debt that's incurred after your death. And cooperation, power with, for example, is a much better model than power over or power under. And that's true of anything. There's situations like the boundaries are separate from and a part of all of this. If you don't know what is and is not okay with you and for you and to you, then you can't set effective boundaries. So if you haven't figured that part out, then work with that first. That's sort of the main point. Let me think. I've read of some people who just like to send nasty spirits out of somebody who cut them in line and, harass them or what have you. And I can't imagine what's going to happen when they pass from this plane and have to face the facts of what they've done and what the cost is of that. But that brings up the other subject that I wanted to talk about too, is like all magic has a price. Now the way the shows portray that is annoying in my mind, because they always portray that as any magic you do, positive or negative, always has a negative price attached to it, which isn't true. I have not found that to be true. If you want to look at it purely energetically, anytime you expend a certain amount of energy, then you need to have a time to recoup that energy and recover from it. And that, in a sense, is the price, as a sort of a raw, on the basic level idea. So if you're going to do a ritual, for example, any ritual, doesn't matter what it is, you have to prepare for it. So you're putting energy into it at the beginning. Then you perform it, and you're putting energy out to do that. And then at the end, you have to, complete the process. And then you have to recover. So one of the reasons why there's a lot of feasting at rituals is that's part of how you can recover, is eating. It gives you energy back from the energy that you've expended. But it doesn't mean the idea, that means that after a certain number of times that you do this, then you're going to have to get sick or have bad luck or, die. A lot of this stuff depends upon your incorporated in personal belief systems. Like when the witches went and stopped Hitler in World War II from landing on the British Isles, ever stepping foot there, they did that ritual with the notion that they held that interfering with anyone's free will for whatever reason, whether it's for good or bad purposes, meant that you had to pay a cost for that because that was against the rules. And so there would be a punishment for that. And when the witches came together on the east coast of Britain and did that really huge cone of power and put everything they had into it in order to stop Hitler and to stymie his will, some of them died. And that was paying the ultimate price. So it's not that can't happen, but it's that the belief in it and the constant use of that phrase and the repetition of it in every magical show you've ever seen, pretty much, sort of reinforces that notion. And then people start to apply that to everything. So even the simplest things that you might do, magically speaking. And I don't think that is the case. Again, it's a matter of the energy expended needs to be recouped on some level in some way, and that would be it. Now, on the other hand, if you are, say, doing nothing but attempting to control other people, and that's your whole focus, is to bend people to your will, etc., then there's going to be a negative backlash from that eventually. Whether you can put it off or not, at some point, that energy is going to rebound on you because that's going against the stream of life force. Anything I do, I try to feel that energetic stream current of how life or the universe or whatever is going, where it's headed, what it's up to, and whether that is going with the life energy or going against the life energy. And that's how I make my decisions. I've tried to explain that. It's hard to explain. It's like I have a spot inside of me that I say, I'm thinking of doing this, and I show it to the spot, and then how the spot reacts to it and responds to it tells me whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. That doesn't mean you might not do it even if it's a bad idea, but still then I know that if I do it, it's a bad idea. And generally speaking, that helps me to take pause and think about things. So one of the other things I do when I'm trying to decide if something is the right thing or the wrong thing to do, if I'm feeling very intensely about like a person, they've done something to me that ticks me off, I try to wait at least 3 days after the event so I have a cooling off period, and then I can look at it more from a perspective of what does this really mean in the larger scheme of things. Is this something that I really care about that much? What should I really do about this? Is there anything I really should do about this, or should I just let that go? And that has helped me to avoid some, I'm sure, potential pitfalls when it comes to stuff. I'm trying to think of other ways that this applies, because it's hard to come up with real concrete things because I don't do the stuff that would, generally speaking, okay, here's one. I spoke about Venus earlier, and I've told you a little bit about my friend when I was younger who had trouble staying in his body. He was constantly going into the astral plane, and one of the places he went to all the time was the Venusian sphere. And I worried immediately when he told me that because he was spending all of his time there. So that's another way that this can happen. If you spend all of your time in a different sphere of reality, then that becomes more real than your physical reality, and then that can pull you to that when you die as well. And he apparently couldn't get there anymore after he told me about it and blamed me for blocking his access, but I don't know if I did or not. May have been doing a lot of things unconsciously at that point. I had people seeing me in the astral in their houses, for example, that I have no recollection of, and yeah, apparently I was a rascal. And but that is definitely one of the things that can happen too. It's not that in that case, it wasn't so much as the same kind of debt that I was talking about earlier, where you're asking them for assistance, but in this case, changing his energy to the point where the only place he wanted to be or felt comfortable being was in their sphere. And that can be true of any of the planetary spheres that are out there. It's one of the things I started doing early on. I mean, sometimes I'm not sure where some of this information came from, except that I always knew it. It was there. And I suspect it has to do with past lives and bringing some of that forward with me, especially in the middle of a crisis. It's like if something happens in the moment, I have an ability to know what's going on and then what to do about it and how to react or act in that moment. So it's you know. So that's definitely an example. And like I said, spending a lot of time with an elemental, again, the same idea. So if you think about this from a wider perspective, basically what all of this means is know yourself, create healthy boundaries, not spending all of your time on one endeavor. So variety and variety of different kinds of encounters with the spirit world will help to disperse that. Do your research, know what things are. My birthday's coming up soon, so I thought about the one that my husband told me when we first got together, which was someone gave him this spell in Latin, I think, and he didn't know what it said when he first got it. And the person says, "Oh, don't worry about that. Just say it." But he decided it'd be better to know what it said before he said it. So he, went through and figured out the words and the gist of the spell. And basically it was calling on this spirit being and saying, "Hey, it's my birthday. Do me this favor because it's my birthday." And of course it wasn't his birthday. So I'm thinking of having him look up that spell and maybe thinking about asking that spirit for some help on my birthday. I don't know. I haven't decided yet, but knowing what you're doing is really important. Just taking somebody's word from it. If you've got foreign words, whatever your language happens to be, if your spell or instructions or whatever are in a language that you're not familiar with, always find a way to get those words interpreted and know what it is that you're signing on for, because you don't want to accidentally do this stuff. You want to, if you're going to do it, you want to do it on purpose. That's, don't know why anyone would want to do it, but that's okay. I'm not everyone, right? So, and I think that that works with working with deities and such as well. That's one of the reasons why most witches, the way we are pagans who are into deities of different kinds, look at it, is that it's a cooperative endeavor between us and whatever god or goddess form we're looking to work with, because they're just another kind of energy that we can work with, and it's not a worship a deity kind of thing the way some other religions are. It's not a giving up of your free will or your decision making ability or whatever in order to get a favor, because that's a pact. If what you're doing is feeding something in order to get something out, then you have a sort of a natural exchange of some type. But if you're feeding it, just feeding it and feeding it and hoping to get something back, then it's a different kind of relationship. Yeah. Anyway, a lot of times when people are in crisis, they try to make, deals with God or what have you. Like when somebody is sick and not doing well, it's like, if you help them not to die, then I will do this for you, and then that's an agreement that you've made, and then if you fail to do the agreement, you could be in trouble. Never make those kind of statements if you can help it. And then letting the universe know what you're willing or not willing to do. Like when I got that prophecy from that guy telling me that I was never going to see my children again, and that it would be a good thing for me because it would allow me to become the great teacher I was meant to be, I immediately announced to the universe on the spot that if indeed that happened to be true, if it was a true statement that this person was making, then I wasn't going to cooperate with it and I would quit now. And that would be it. Not going to do it. So your relationship to the universe is really driven by your own decisions and your understanding of that relationship with the universe, and then again, your boundaries. I set a boundary with the universe in that moment and said, not okay with me. I'm not going to cooperate with this. Whatever this is, I'm out. And if the price for being a great teacher is giving up my children, I'm not going to do it. And so I think paying attention to what you're doing and how you're saying it and what you mean by what you say, and then looking at your belief systems that underlie it, and not just the ones that you have, but also looking down inside of yourself to see what are some unconscious beliefs that you've been holding on to that you might have absorbed from your teachers, your culture, your studies, an author that you read, somebody that you listened to, whatever it happens to be. Because in the end, it's your relationship with the universe that's important, and you want to make it the best relationship for yourself, not, for a person you admire or a person you're afraid of, or, whatever that happens to be. So, although it's an important subject, it's hard to talk about it specifically. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can say at this point. I think we'll have some good questions generated from this, and so that'll probably help to focus it more precisely on situations, because I have my situations that I know I've dealt with, but then you're going to have a whole different set of situations that I may never have thought of or even encountered. And that's the point of this, is to make us more conscious participants in our own evolutionary process. and our decision making. So we're not being pushed by our subconscious or by our past or by our parents or desire or need for approval or the thinking we need a certain kind of power in order to be worthwhile and that kind of thing. Because really, being here, being alive, connecting with life as well as we can is, in my opinion, the whole point of this. If it was just to get away and evolve and not be here, there's an easy solution. We should just all stop having babies. And then after about 150 years, we would all be somewhere else and not be here. So I think that that's, it's not something I'm interested in. And I know that because I had the opportunity to leave the human sphere once when I met one of the guardian thresholds, and instead of going off with them or it or whatever and leaving all of this behind, I chose to stay here and be a participant in this reality, life, whatever it is we call it, that we have. So, and I'm not sorry that I did, although there was some rough moments in between then and now. It still was a good decision, in my opinion. Anyway, I'm rambling. Didn't get as much sleep last night as I would have liked, considering the exploding fireworks all over our neighborhood. But we made it through. Didn't have to call the police, so that was always good. And like I said earlier, hope you guys had a good beginning of your new year. And I guess I'll see you on Sunday, and we'll see what kind of things we talk about then. So, this is Siofra's Magick Alcove, and I'm Siofra Bradigan. Blessed be.